Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 25th Everett Public Schools Board of Directors regular meeting. May you please stand and join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I have the honor of reading our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land, on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Hussein.
Present.
Director Nichols.
Present.
Director Mitchell. Present. Director Byrd. Student Representative Hussein. Student Representative Coach Bisson. Present.
Thank you. As usual, our first item of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Selsman, will you please introduce the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public. Good evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following: the Superintendents Report, a segment for board comments, a segment for public comments, a segment for routine business, a segment for strategic project monitoring, a segment for new business, and upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, changes have been made to item 10.10, approval amendment to the superintendent's contract. The date was corrected in item 14.02, approval of resolution 1254, academic and student wellbeing plan. The PowerPoint was added. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. The agenda is adopted. Which takes us to item 5.0, which is recognitions, and unfortunately, we do not have a recognition this afternoon. So we will go ahead and move to item 6.0. We'll move to item 7, which is the Superintendents Report. Dr. Salzman.
Thank you. Good evening. May I say a few words? Monday is Memorial Day. It is a time to honor and mourn the military personnel who have died while performing their duties. We appreciate everyone who has served our country, but specifically take this time on Monday to thank and honor those who have died in the line of service. It is because of their sacrifice we have the freedoms that we have today. I just want to note that when Memorial Day is on Monday, another law. Second thing, I would like to let the public know that on June 9th at 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., we will have vaccines for our students of all ages of 12 to, I believe, 16 and further, 16 and even older. We'll have vaccines at Evergreen Middle. I want to thank the health district, Ms. Kathy Reeves and her team, our nurses who have done an amazing job, all nurses, and to the board who helped us accomplish this task and brought it to our attention. And again, the first shall be June 9th at Evergreen Middle School. Thank you. That is my report this evening.
Thank you. And just to clarify, and this is for students that are 12 and older, all students, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to make sure it wasn't just up until 16.
Yes, sorry.
All students that are eligible for a vaccine.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent news. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to Director and Student Representative reports. Student Representative Phil Bisson, would you like to start?
I guess I will allude to something I saw later in the agenda and just say it's really crazy that it's been a year since I was confirmed onto this, since this is only my third in-person meeting, so it still feels very new to me. But I'm really, really excited for us to welcome the new student representative. Really, I wasn't not supposed to mention that until later, but I'm really looking forward to that.
We are too, thank you.
Although I will miss Amina.
I know. We'd like to have them all back, actually. Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I think you are allowed to say anything that's on the agenda, so it was my pleasure to interview the students, and so I was so excited that Dr. Salzman was able to select one, because I know it was a hard decision, because we have 3 exceptional students. And just so very excited to see the graduation plans and how we will make sure that we stay safe and keep the students safe, for those that are and are not vaccinated yet. Just very, very excited that after last year, that we're back to whatever the future times might hold. But thank you so much for allowing the class of 2021 to be able to celebrate graduation. Thank you.
So I also want to thank the district and the health district for putting on the vaccination. Amazing. Very proud that we as a district are able to do that for our community. I believe in the press release, we said that adult doses may be available at that time. Yeah. So, if you're a parent and you're getting your kids vaccinated and you haven't been vaccinated yet, please sign up for one. And then on the road to Memorial Day, it's always a very solemn time for us in the veteran military community. And what I would ask of all of you is just to spend some good time with your family. Recognize that our time here is limited and that we need to be all forward and let people do.
I would like to comment on last Wednesday. I had a great opportunity to sit in on our exit conference for the state audit. The state comes in and audits our books essentially. And what I was able to find out is that we had a very clean audit. And I'm very grateful for those individuals who are in our finance department who work tirelessly to ensure that we spend the public's money in the right fashion with transparency, and we make it known that we honor their opportunities to give money for our school district. So our audit was clean. It was done very well, and there were no findings, and I'm very grateful for that, so thank you. I also would like to say that with the onset of students being able to get vaccinated in school so that they can hit the road running essentially in the fall and be back in the classroom, this is an opportunity for everyone to have that excitement and celebration that we're going to actually be back in school. So if you know of kids that need vaccinations, please give them to Everett on the 9th if they haven't received a vaccination yet, and get them vaccinated so that they can celebrate this opportunity and then be ready to hit the road running when school starts. And yes, I'm so happy for Amina going on to the next chapter in her life and her career, but I do really want to say I will miss her. She's been an excellent student rep. She has taken what she's learned here back to the students. She has spoken on behalf of the students here and made us all aware of the needs that we have in our school district. And I will miss her greatly. But I am so pumped with what lies ahead of her and how she is really ready to take on those challenges. So I'm excited for that for her. Graduation is right around the corner. I'm looking forward to it. Our kids are ready to go out into the world and be their own people. So I'm so excited for that.
Thank you. I also wanted to reiterate, I had the opportunity to attend the exit conference as well. I just walked away with such a feeling of gratitude for both our team in-house, and also the audit team, just a great group of individuals, take their work very seriously. And the outcome of the audit, once again, we had a clean audit, and it just gives, I mean, as a director, that's one of the most important things we do is make sure that our finances are in order, and to know that the policies that we set are being carried out, and the due diligence by the staff to be able to come up year after year with those audits, and the additional reporting that our district does really puts it in an excellent position as we move forward and we look at things like passing bonds and selling bonds. It's really a benefit to not only our district, but our community, because it does in the end save literally thousands and thousands of dollars when we have good finances. So thank you, Jeff Moore and your team. And then, oh, I had the honor of riding along in the car to hand out the Superintendent Scholar Awards. And as many of you know, this is one of our top academic honors in our district. And these are just truly outstanding students who exemplify the best our district has to offer. And boy, if you just want a dose of feel good, that was the day. I just walked away feeling so inspired by these young people and their plans and their parents, and it was just such a happy occasion and the kind of thing that we need after a year like we've had. So thank you for allowing me to fill a seat in that car. So I think that's it for board comments. So we'll go ahead and move to public comments, and tonight I believe we have two. The first one I would like to call Kirk Forsythe to the lectern. And he's going to provide the outline. Dr. Salzman?
I know public speakers tonight are speaking, I believe, on PE and class size, is that correct?
That is correct.
I meant actually more the logistics of how the public, so we haven't done this in person actually together, so I apologize. Typically one of us lets you know you have 3 minutes and that there's 3 lights on the lectern there. The first one turns green, and that means go. The second one is yellow, and that means you have 30 seconds left, and the red one comes on, and that means you're all done. So I want to thank you for being here this evening to share your thoughts with the board. We appreciate you coming in and taking time to do so.
Very good.
Okay?
So good evening, President Mason, all members of the board, Dr. Saltzman, and others in attendance. My name is Kirk Forsythe, and I have taught for the Everett Public Schools as a PE specialist for over 20 years and currently teach at Eisenhower Middle. I'm joined by my colleague, Brian Soxy, who also teaches PE Health at Eisenhower and has taught in Everett for 13 years. We want to call attention to an issue that affects PE Health teachers across all 5 of our middle schools, and more importantly, impacts the roughly 5,000 students they serve. Contract negotiations have just begun, and we want to shed light on the issue of middle school PE class size in order to ask for changes that will address some inequities our students are experiencing daily. First, it is a disservice to our students to allow classes as large as 40 when all other general ed subjects have class size limit of 32. The larger PE class size affects an ability to build relationships with students, provide opportunities within activities, ensure safety, and to supply equipment for every student. In the current age of social emotional learning, it is also important to limit numbers to build trust between staff and students. Too many in a class and students become anonymous. Second, middle school PE students are asked at times to learn classroom curriculum of health education and sexual health education on the gym floor, again with student numbers of 40. Compared to high school, where there is a health teacher and a classroom and a class size matching general ed numbers of no more than 32. Without desks, chairs, and classroom resources, it is difficult to engage students in traditional classroom curriculum. Students need the right atmosphere to learn this critical subject. So we're asking for 2 things. please review the supporting document that I sent via email, which contains additional explanation and data. And then please, we'd like to ask for action for our school leaders as they negotiate our upcoming contract. We are here for the benefit of our students and believe that together we can provide positive, kid-centered solutions. We sincerely appreciate your willingness to listen and the time you've given us tonight to express our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. It's particularly appreciated, and now we don't have the opportunity to get into schools and PE classes, so for you to bring your experience to us and share that with us is a value to us. So thank you for taking your time, both of you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, our second public comment is from Mr. Jeff Hackathorn, and I believe he emailed his comment to us, so I'll go ahead and have Jamie read that for the board.
Good afternoon. Priority legislative actions that you should take, please. Number 1, there are 295 traditional school districts in Washington. 292 of those districts have 4-year terms on their school board members. Just 3 have 6-year terms: Spokane, Tacoma, and Everett. Long 6-year terms are a form of candidate suppression. Many of Everett's past school board members had to resign midterm, and then the superintendent, not the current one, basically appointed through proxy a replacement member. And then those members, loyal to the superintendent providing no oversight, have an incumbency advantage. The Everett School District Board members should change their terms to 4 years. Number 2, some Washington state school districts run their levies and bonds in November in the general election, the highest voter turnout elections of the year. Everett, except for the pandemic 2020, always runs its bonds and levies in February or April, the lowest voter turnout months. Citizens often don't realize there is a special spring election. Until recently, these special elections gave school districts the option of allowing pro-con arguments in a voter's pamphlet, and the Everett School District always chose not to allow this form of information for voters. These special spring elections for school measures are a form of voter suppression, and the Everett SDA should stop it. Number 3, Everett SDA administrators and school board members should avoid the appearance of conflicts of interest. That includes not serving on boards of organizations that the district does business with. It includes not holding another government office. Another reason against holding multiple government offices is that it prevents other citizens, other voices, from participating in our government. Thank you, Jeff Haggerty.
Thank you very much for providing that comment. We'll go ahead and make sure that Mr. Hackathorn receives an answer on his comments. Okay, we will go ahead and move to the consent agenda, item 10 on our agenda this evening. And I would ask Mr. Saltzman to please introduce tonight's consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts, grants, and current contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in a Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider discussion about the policy implication of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received no questions regarding items on the consent agenda. The consent agenda is presented and published for board approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded twice to approve the consent agenda. Would any director like to remove an item from tonight's consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Consent agenda is approved. Our next item of business is strategic progress monitoring, and tonight we have progress to graduation for the class of 2021. And I see Dr. Kathy Woods making her way to the lectern. Go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening and to share our progress towards graduation for the class of 2021. Tonight I'll be talking to you a little bit about just a reminder of the grad rates for the class of 2020, this progress for the class of 2021, and the systems that we have in place to support graduation and college and career readiness. Just to point out, this is aligned with our strategic goal of 100% students graduating, and also our priority student outcome in the strategic plan refresh of ensuring that all students are prepared to succeed in college and career. You know the history of us working to ensure that our students graduate. We are proud of these rates, and in particular, last year, being able to continue to graduate 95% of our students in 4 years in 2020, when the last few months of that school year were also the first few months of the pandemic. We also know that we don't only want students to graduate, but we expect them to graduate ready for college, career, and life. This year, the high school graduation requirements for the class of 2021 include the high school and beyond plan, 24 credits, and as you know, this is the first year that 24 credits are required, and graduation pathway options in math and English language arts. Students can meet those graduation pathway requirements in a number of ways, and they're listed here on the slide, and we've gone over those before, but just as a reminder, several of these pathway options, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, the SAT, and the ACT, have been unavailable to our students for 15 months. However, through very careful planning, the vast majority of our students will meet their graduation pathways this year, in spite of not having an SBA, an SAT, or an ACT these last 2 school years. About 82% of our current seniors have already met the pathway requirement. 13% are in the process of meeting that pathway. This might be through earning credit in dual credit courses, AP courses or exams, in a transition math class called Bridge to College Math, or by completing a qualifying sequence of career and technical education courses that lead to dual credit or industry recognized certifications. So this year, even though students had fewer opportunities for tests, with intentional planning, we expect that a higher percentage of students will meet the graduation pathway requirement than did so last year. We are working hard to ensure that meeting these pathways also ensure that a student is prepared to succeed in their next steps in career and college. CTE programs like robotics, that's pictured here, and programs students access through Snowell Skill Center are examples of ways that we are preparing students for college and career. In some cases, though, we know that in remote learning and in other circumstances due to the COVID-19 pandemic, some students have been unable to access all they need in order to meet all the graduation requirements. This is despite our ongoing efforts to engage the students and the return to in-person learning. So the state has provided some flexibility through waivers of credits or graduation pathway requirements for students to graduate. And a couple of weeks ago, you approved that resolution to allow this. We need to make sure that we are not graduating students who are not ready for their next steps for college and career. So we need to make sure that we, not just the students, but the school staff and school district are making a good faith effort to ensure that we are giving them the course offerings that they need, that we are offering that through proficiency-based, competency-based credit, that we offer course equivalencies, credit recovery, and numerous ways for them to meet their graduation requirements. We need to make sure that they have post-secondary readiness, that they identify their post-secondary goals in their high school and beyond plan, and that they demonstrate some readiness to take those next steps, even if they haven't met all of the individual graduation requirements. And then it becomes a team decision with the student, the family, and the school. The student and the family needs to understand the benefits and limitations if we offer them a waiver. It needs to be based on individual needs and readiness. And there is an appeal process. So in addition to the waivers, we have multiple supports for students to continue to meet the graduation requirements and college and career readiness. One of those supports that we have is our Everett Re-Engagement Academy through Graduation Alliance. We've had this program for 7 years, and it has grown each year. It's an online program with wraparound support. So like the students in our comprehensive and alternative high schools in the district, Graduation Alliance students have laptops that they can use at home, and Graduation Alliance has a digital curriculum taught by Washington State certificated teachers. In addition, they have academic coaches, tutors, and a local advocate. They have a face-to-face meeting requirement of at least 2 hours per month, and Graduation Alliance really asks the students for 2 hours per week. Of course, for the last 15 months, these meetings have been remote. This year, we've also added mental health counseling access for the students and also their qualifying family members. We currently have 167 students enrolled. They range in age from 16 to 21. And as of April 30th, we have had 37 graduate so far this year and expect another 25 to 30 before the end of the school year in August. Over the last 7 years, 183 students have graduated from this program, which is designed to re-engage students who were either already dropouts or at risk of becoming dropouts. Another way we're supporting our seniors and also other students as they move toward graduation and college and career readiness is through our robust summer programs. This year, the online courses are free to our district students as well as the other programs, including our credit recovery programs. We currently have students registered for over 250 courses in credit recovery. That's not 250 individual students because they may sign up for more than one course. And we have a similar number of courses in online summer school for students to accelerate. We also, in Everett Career Link, which has exploration, mentorship, and internships, between those 3 programs, we have 140 students signed up. We know that even with the possibility of waivers for some of our seniors, it will be better for them to stay with us through the summer or possibly into the next school year to ensure that they are ready for their next steps. Our support for them in the summer is extensive, with daily check-ins and ongoing support. And finally, that support continues if they need continued classes in the fall. It's a high priority to engage our students to ensure college and career readiness. So I'm pleased that our counselors, administrators, success coordinators, and teachers have been able to work with students and their families to plan graduation pathways that lead to post-secondary readiness, even in the midst of this pandemic. This has required extensive work that we shared with you in March, and that work continues. We need to work on increasing that intentionality, not only in high school, but in earlier grades as well, so that we make those students' high school and beyond plans the vehicle for personalized planning all the way through high school. It's become increasingly apparent during this pandemic how really important that intentional planning is. We're also continuing to build relationships with local colleges to ensure successful transitions for our students. So thank you very much, and I'm going to just open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woods. I have to say a comment because I am so thrilled that the state has finally recognized that we need more graduation pathways for our students, that not every student learns the exact same way and needs the exact same thing to get to a point where they're ready to graduate. And I, in particular, appreciate the expansion of our dual credit classes and the career pathway programs, where we are truly getting students ready for their next step, which may not be college. And so, and there's so many great opportunities that aren't college, I just, you know, at the end of the day, we're preparing students for life, not to take the test. And these changes to me are just, you know, I've seen it happen over the last many years, and they're just also positive, so just gotta say that, thank you. Director, do you have questions or other comments?
Can I ask a question? On slide 7, the pie chart, is that just sort of an update of the old red, yellow, green? And if it is, just because of the pandemic, is 82% of the green standard compared to previous years for this point? Because I know how hard the staff works in this last, it's a sprint right now to get that next 13, 14, 15, but is that what this is?
Thank you for asking that. This is not the same as the red, yellow, green, which really had to do with credits.
Okay.
This is the graduation pathway, which we used to use a red light, green light, kind of look about, oh, they've met all their graduation or they're on track as far as credits go. And then this was their SBA testing or whatever their testing pathway. And now that pathways have so expanded, it's just a really different way. This is higher than it was last year. This is only the second year of having these expanded pathways. So we have a higher number of students, in spite of the fact that they didn't have access for a longer period of time. We have a higher percentage of students who have met their graduation pathway already.
So 82% on May 25th
Yeah,
could walk away today as long as they were past those classes. I mean, like, they can't walk away today because they still need to take their finals, but like, they're ready to go.
they're ready to go.
If they pass, okay, and then just that sprint for those next 13, 14, you know, that last year.
Correct, and I refer to it as running a marathon, but at a sprint pace.
And it is, I mean, to Director Mason's point, you know, that not every student is college bound, but also a June stop is not where every student is. That I appreciate the fact that we can get to the students up through August, counts for the June dates, and the Graduation Alliance, that we have a responsibility to those kids until they're 21, to make sure that they can graduate. And I think it's just great work on all of our partners and all of our teachers on really the marathon of 13 plus years of school. Thank you.
So with the program that we've established right now, do we anticipate that by August graduation date, we may see quite a few people going across the state for graduation, or just a few, are you saying?
It's interesting, the last couple of years in the August graduation, most of our graduates have come from Graduation Alliance, and our comprehensive and alternative schools in our district have really gotten them there by June. I think there may be a few more this year in the August graduation, but between the waivers, if that is the appropriate for the student, and all the hard work that our staff is doing, I think the vast majority of them will be ready by June.
Fantastic. I always would look to the August class because they have really put in and shown that they are serious and they want to be graduates in high school. So that's
And we're planning for that August graduation as we speak.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the dropout leaving program and what that looks like?
I would be glad to. So we contract with Graduation Alliance, which is an organization that actually runs programs like this throughout the country. We have a really robust relationship with them. What we do is students are referred either through, like they've already dropped out, or they go to a counselor or success coordinator is working with them. And students need to then, if they agree and want to go into that program, they have to meet certain requirements very similar to the alternative learning experiences requirements. So they have to do some testing, they have to agree to the meetups. It's a pretty rigorous program that we expect Graduation Alliance to enforce, that they do that, and the students need to make a certain amount of progress each month. They need to do their monthly meetups, and they also need to earn credit each month. So they may only be earning credit in one course at a time, but typically they meet credit, they make credit in 2 courses at a time, so approximately 1 credit per month, which gets them actually a little faster than than if they earn 6 credits in a year. It is a year-round program, so that goes September 1st to August 31st. Students can only be enrolled in the program if they turn 16, this is by state law, if they turn 16 by September 1st of that school year. So if a student turns 16 September 3rd, they still have to wait a whole other year to enroll in the program. It is really designed for students who would have been on our dropout list otherwise. And I think I shared last time I presented to you some pictures of some of our students who were graduating, and they really have, I think adding the local advocate, so that's who they meet with each week or twice a month. And then they also have an academic coach, and they have teachers for their individual classes. And as I said, we've added access to mental health support, just truly wraparound services. I work directly with the program manager who supports several school districts in Washington. I had the opportunity to speak to all the employees of Graduation Alliance from around the country in what they call a town hall, just to highlight some of the experiences we've had here, because we are one of their more successful programs. So really proud of the program.
So, you made it seem like the students have to already be engaged with some sort of counselor or something like that to get referred to the program.
They're either they're on our dropout list and we do a direct referral, or a counselor can refer them if they're still in school and still.
So we are either knocking on doors or sending out letters or doing something to try to engage.
Yeah, and we've used TikTok. We've used all kinds, the Graduation Alliance did the TikToks, but all social media, knocking on doors, phone calls, really looking for them, and particularly those students who have had trouble engaging in this time.
Well, I think that there's a student, probably 2 years ago, that he was in an apprenticeship program, and his employer sort of said you had to get a high school diploma in order to get into the apprenticeship program. So it was sort of like, I think he re-engaged with us because it was a job requirement, and it was sort of a different way of doing it, that the students have the right, so either we can find them or they can find us. We will serve them, and he was so excited to get that because it got him on his way. It's just, and that's what we can do.
Yeah, thank you.
Student representative?
Yeah, I just had a question about, so I know right now the graduation pathway requirements, a lot of them focus on standardized testing, so there's like the C+ or higher, or 3 on AP exam, the SAT, and the small analysis assessment. And I imagine that during this year, the majority of students are meeting those requirements in other ways, and classes rather than those standardized tests because we are going to provide them. I was wondering if that was something you could look at in the future in terms of graduation pathway requirements, or moving away from standardized testing since that's already a trend, and looking more, because I know we've had a discussion at our meetings already about how student learning, especially in math, is gauged a lot better by a teacher or a grade in a class than it is by an exam or a standardized test. So I know that there's already a lot of options for those, but I was wondering if we can move those more in the direction based off of this year and moving forward in terms of things that are not standardized tests.
Yeah, thank you for that question. These graduation pathway requirements are established by the state, but the state is looking at broadening them. One of the things they're looking at is more of a performance assessment. They were calling it a portfolio, and I think they changed to calling it an exhibition. So where they would need to demonstrate their learning to a high level in at least 2 subject areas, but it didn't necessarily have to be math and English language arts. Thinking of a student who may be very highly proficient in music and is already applied to and gotten into a music conservatory and has not had access to all of these things. Also, the CTE sequence, we're really looking at making sure that we have those sequence and those pathways really robustly able to move students towards college and career readiness. So one of the programs, for example, that does that is Snow Isle. If they're in Snow Isle for a whole year, they actually earn 3 credits in one career technical pathway, and so that meets that requirement if it aligns with our post-high school plans.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll say thank you again, especially for the additional information. I think we all learned a fair amount this afternoon. Our next item of business is actually a break, but I'm looking at the time and we're running quite a bit ahead of time at our meeting, so if I don't have any objections from the board, I would like to suggest that we move forward with well, let's see, so,
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that for the next thing we do is,
yes,
which
so.
I'm super excited for.
I know, it's the best part of our evening. So, well, I shouldn't say that, sorry. So our next item of business is information discussion, and we do not have any information or discussion items. And then our next item is 13.0, which is unfinished business, and we do not have unfinished business tonight. So that takes us to 14.0 new business. And the first item of new business is 14.01, approval of student representative to the school board. And I am going to turn it over to Dr. Lancaster to introduce our new school board representative.
To introduce the best part of the evening.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do that though, I would like to acknowledge, it's a little bit sad because typically Robert Polk was the person doing this and he did it so gracefully for so many years. So I just want to do an acknowledgement of his great work in our district. And with that, I would love to invite Binta Colley to come stand up here closer while I talk about her. Binta is a sophomore at Cascade High School. Sorry. And you might be thinking, but it was Sequoia's turn to have a school board rep, and they, just due to this unique year, weren't able to get one. So Cascade enthusiastically stepped up and said, hey, we would like our students to have this opportunity. It was their turn in the rotation. So we had 3 students that were interviewed. They were all exceptional. I want to thank Jessica Easthope for arranging those, and Principal Takeyoshi and Director Mitchell for being part of the interviews. And we sent forward 2 outstanding candidates to Dr. Salzman, who did not like that tough decision. I mean, it was a hard one. We had 2 outstanding candidates, and I am thrilled to introduce Binta. Binta describes herself as a determined and natural-born leader. She's always looking for an opportunity to do better. She's in ASB as the involvement coordinator, so she's all about engagement, which I knew you guys would like. She's also in National Honor Society. She's a member of the Interact Club, and she's been an avid student for the past 4 years. She's been on the cheer team for 2 years, but I want you to know she's talked with her coach, and on Tuesdays she might be missing her cheering opportunities because she knows she has to be here, or she gets to be here. She is passionate about learning. I read through her recommendation letters, and her teachers described her as hardworking, dependable, team over self is what her cheer coach said. She's a great communicator. She has a strong voice. And her avid teacher said, which is this part I love, she's a dedicated friend, supportive sister, and a respectful daughter. So I would first like Binta to introduce her family that's with her tonight. And then she's going to tell you a little bit about what she's excited about serving on the board, why she's excited about that.
Hello, my name is Binta Colley, and I'm here with my mom, my dad, and my older sister. And thank you so much.
You can have them go up if they want.
Want some?
Come on up.
So this is my mom, and this is my older sister, and this is my dad. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very excited for the upcoming year and to be a part of this team. Something I'm excited for is making our school and our whole district feel more included and feel as they have a student who will help them bring their voices to the board and make sure that all the problems are addressed and everything is spoken. So thank you so much for the opportunity again.
If you'd like to take a picture of you in front of the board, if you can just stay where you are, but stand up.
Okay.
And then.
This is all new for us. so-
Yeah.
Come down and shake your hand,
Yeah.
congratulate parents.
You guys can just stand in a little semicircle in front of them.
Family too.
Yeah, family too.
Because you're a unit that comes to us.
You guys raised her.
Thank you.
You want us closer or?
No, I want Tara closer to you.
You get us?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, more. Thank you very much. Do we want to get a picture with your phone?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. You look like you were ready to take a picture. Oh. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Binta, we look forward to seeing you. We'll take good care of you on Tuesday nights. Okay, now I think, with that fun over, we will go ahead and break for 10 minutes. Depending on which clock you're watching. We will resume at, let's see, we're at 6:47, so 6:57, we'll resume our meeting. Oh, 5:46. Thank you. Apparently I'm not paying attention to either clock. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and resume our meeting. Our next item of business is 14.02. It's approval of Resolution 1254, Academic and Student Wellbeing Plan. And I believe Becky Reeds is going to get us started with several other presenters.
There we are. Okay, thank you. We are here tonight to share with you the Academic and Student Wellbeing Recovery Plan and the attached resolution. This is a plan that we have been asked to complete by OSPI, and this plan directly relates to ESSER 3 funding. And I wanted to just be upfront at the beginning to say this was a very prescriptive plan, so it might be missing some details that you would be very curious about, and that's because this is really more of a framework of how we're going to build things out later, but we followed the check boxes and filled in all the things that we are asked to do, and really created some good supports that we'll be able to use moving forward. So what we're going to do is start with reviewing some of the plan requirements, and then we're going to go over the plan highlights, which includes universal supports, diagnostic assessments, strategic supports for identified student groups, and then how we're going to monitor this moving forward. And then we'll have a time for question and answer, and then ask you at the end to approve Resolution 1254. So some of the plan requirements include that this plan needed to be developed with the use of an equity access tool, and you will hear more about the tool we used in a few minutes. Also, the school board must approve this plan, and once it is approved, we post it on our website in an accessible manner for the community, and then we submit it to OSPI by June 1st, which is this weekend. And then the plan comes in 3 phases, so there'll be a monitoring and an update in November, and then again in April. And another one of the requirements that the plan has is that this plan must be developed with community input. So we have developed a page on our district website that's called the engagement page. And on that page, we've put all of the different ways that we have connected with our community around this topic and other topics in the last couple months. And you can see that we had a Let's Connect session in May, and that was done both in English and in Spanish, asking families in what ways we can better support their students' academic learning and also their social and emotional learning. And then we also sent out a fall planning survey asking about their thoughts for the fall. And then May 6th, we sent out a thought exchange and asked what are some impactful strategies that we can use to help your child prepare for learning in the next grade level. And then last Wednesday, we actually posted this plan with a voice over PowerPoint on our website for the community to view, and had a form that they could send back their input. And so all of these pieces help feed into this. And just so you know, on this webpage, you can also go look. The results of each of these engagement opportunities are also posted on the webpage, so you can see what we learned from each of these different opportunities for input. So that is how the community was engaged in our plan, and the next piece that the plan requires, as I mentioned, is the use of an equity analysis tool, and Dr. Matthews is going to talk about that.
Thank you. So the requirement of the equity analysis tool and the public display of this tool allowed for school districts to select one of a sample of equity analysis tools or use their own. And we elected to use our own because we have been using one for some time. Through our school improvement planning process, we've been monitoring equity by looking at gaps in performance and disproportionality. That process was formalized a few years ago through the OSPI Consolidated Program Review process. We've taken that formal equity analysis tool, which focused on program enrollment disproportionality, and added disparate impact for student outcomes. Disproportionality focuses on whether or not students are enrolled in programs in the same proportion that they exist in the population enrolled in our schools. So for example, if there are 5% of our students who are Black or African American, then we would expect 5% of the students in high cap to be Black or African American, 5% of students in AP, 5% in special education. And when that's not the case, then we look for disproportionalities and reasons behind that. Disparate impact is looking through another lens, and that is the lens of student outcomes. So disparate impact occurs when policies, practices, and rules or other systems that appear to be neutral are actually resulting in disproportionate impact on one or more protected group. So it's comparing the outcome between student groups irrespective of the size of the population. So it seeks to answer the question, are there differential outcomes for students based on ethnicity or race, program qualification, gender, or socioeconomic status, such that one group is getting a better or different outcome than another group? For example, if we had 63% of our students who are in advanced placement classes and white getting qualifying scores on AP exams, but only say 50% of students who identify as Hispanic in AP classes getting qualifying scores, we would say there's a disparate impact. Those students are in the same course, and yet one is having a better outcome than the other. So the equity analysis tool is a step-by-step process where we look at this data for disparate impact and then create a plan to rectify the situation. So a diverse group of professionals from the school or the district evaluates the data, looking for patterns and trends and variability in the data. And then they might collect additional data, questions arise around a certain issue or situation. Disparities are identified, and then for each one of those, the group would dig deeper into it to determine the cause or the root cause of that disparity in order to address the situation and improve it for students.
So we know that many of our students have finished the school year off with just a few days of in-person instruction each week. However, some of our students have been in a fully remote setting for well over a year. As a result, we've worked to provide opportunities for our students to recover learning. For example, Dr. Woods mentioned earlier in this evening's presentations, credit recovery for high school students, but also additional learning recovery programs for our students who are English learners or students with disabilities at all levels. Additionally, we know that some of our students, like our youngest learners, may not have ever had a school experience. So for this reason, we have two programs we're conducting in the fall, Everett Ready for our incoming kindergartners and Jumpstart for our incoming first and second graders. Are programs, they're kind of ramp-up programs that are intended to help reacclimate incoming kindergartners, first and second grade students to both school routines and social play, as well as our learning programs. In addition to summer recovery and acceleration academies, our schools are also working to develop revised typical orientations for both 6th grade and 9th grade students, but also to include 7th grade and 10th graders, some of whom have never been on campus. These are all developed with the intention of mitigating student learning loss, but also to develop stronger sense of school community and really addressing the social emotional needs of our students.
Another requirement of this plan is to have diagnostic assessments. And diagnostic assessments are required to help educators identify students' specific learning needs and the knowledge, skills, and understanding that they need to build on to improve their strengths and learning in the coming year. Because of their domain specificity and design, diagnostic assessments guide curriculum planning and inform instruction. We are required to identify the academic diagnostic assessments and the frequency of administration of those assessments that will be predominantly used in each grade level to monitor, assess, and target supports for learning. So you can see here that we have a range of assessments that we use from across the grade levels. WAKIDS, the Washington Kindergarten Inventory of developing skills is used at kindergarten. Of course, we have iReady in math and reading at K-5. And we will have diagnostic math unit assessments with our illustrative math at the secondary level. The Zinc reading and Quill writing assessments are secondary assessments that we have used in the past and will continue to use this year in the fall. A couple of new things, the dyslexia screener, which is a new law. We have to screen students for evidence that they might have dyslexia or problems in that area. We'll start doing that in the fall at K2, as well as oral reading fluency and letter naming fluency. And then the Smarter Balance interim assessment blocks, that's something that we've used for years. That'll be available as well in all of the grades tested. META is the replacement for the ALPA 21, and we do that in the fall as well for all students. And then Performance Matters has provided us with about 683 formative assessments, and then comprehensive assessments in each grade level in reading and math, 2 for each grade level. So we have quite a lot of assessments that will help to support that work.
And in addition to academics, the recovery plan calls out diagnostic assessments to help educators build on each student's strengths and specific needs for well-being. In Everett Public Schools, we have been continually expanding the list of diagnostic assessments that are used at each grade level to monitor, assess, and target supports for student well-being, which includes mental health and social emotional learning. Our most comprehensive diagnostic assessment for well-being is the Panorama Survey, which is given twice a year and facilitates analysis over a range of social emotional indicators among all demographic and age groups, grades 3 through 12. The WA Kids assessment that Dr. Matthews mentioned provides useful information over 6 domains of readiness for kindergarten students, one of which includes social emotional indicators. Knowing more about children's entering skills and strengths helps teachers and parents work together to support student growth in the kindergarten year. And the annual school stakeholder survey guides our communication and planning for our employees and their families. In combination with teacher and other staff recommendations, this comprehensive student data informs our Tier 1 well-being supports through our use of social emotional curricula, which is second step for elementary and soon to be and middle schools, and soon to be ruler at the secondary level. And these measures provide key reference points for our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports to provide help for our students who need more personalized interventions.
So our academic and student well-being recovery plan places a high priority on identifying strategic support areas, particularly for student groups identified in our diagnostic assessments as needing intentional supports. Earlier, you heard about universal supports for all students, and here we're identifying strategies to specifically be applied to student groups that the data would show would most benefit from those supports. And the plan required this, not at the exclusion of other groups, but addressing the disproportionate outcomes that Dr. Matthews mentioned earlier. So some of these more tailored strategies would include ensuring our multi-tiered systems of supports is delivered in such a way that students are provided a wide range of services and interventions depending on their individual needs, and that students' response to those interventions are monitored closely by staff so that they can make the adjustments as necessary. We have additional instructional time and before and after school academic supports, summer school programming, building relationships, which is always an important prerequisite in all of our classrooms, social, emotional, and mental health supports, transition supports between grade levels and programs, continued early literacy programs for emerging readers, and inclusionary practices to ensure that students, particularly English learners and students with disabilities, are learning in a least restrictive environment and have access to high quality standards-based instruction.
So the diagnostic assessments identify student learning strengths and their needs. And then the strategic supports identify how we're going to address those strengths and needs. But we also need to evaluate the progress and effectiveness of these supports to identify what changes are needed and make those changes if the program or the intervention is unsuccessful. So monitoring and addressing gaps is not a new activity for us, as you well know. So of course we have the disparate impact assessment to identify and address opportunity gaps in student learning and well-being. But we also have systemic progress monitoring tools like Performance Matters that we use very regularly to disaggregate student assessment data, grades, and other performance data so that we can tailor our instruction and supports to students. Social emotional learning data is analyzed through our student success platform through Panorama Ed, which looks at not just the social emotional learning data, but academic data, performance, behavioral attendance data. And then, of course, the instructional review process every year, which involves leaders from all levels, gives us an opportunity to see what's going on in the classroom, as well as looking at that data and helping to mobilize those resources to help schools to be successful in serving students. So this slide is an example of how we use Performance Matters to identify, monitor, and address gaps. Each of the columns represents performance on the Winter I-Ready diagnostic this year for a different ethnic or racial group. The bars show the performance of each group and the percentage of students below, at, or above standard. Because it's a graphic display, it's easy for us to compare performance of student groups across one school, but also among schools, so that we can see where schools are being particularly successful and where other schools are struggling. And in that way, we can address systemic changes that help us to serve our students better.
So in summary, this is a high-level overview of the plan that OSPI has asked us to put together about academic and student well-being recovery, and this plan needs to be submitted by this weekend. In the board agenda item, you saw a more detailed narrative of the plan, and we want to take a few minutes for questions before we ask for approval of Resolution 1254.
Thank you. Directors, do you have questions?
So I just wanted to touch back on the equity analysis tool, and just make sure, and I think this was an answer for me in the 912 slides, but how are we tracking performance matters disability status? So whether that
Absolutely, yeah. So program qualification is what we would call that, and so we look at students with disabilities and students who qualify for English learner services as well.
Okay. So that's definitely something that we'll make sure of that. And then as far as data from the panorama surveys, this may be more of Dr. Stout or this previous question. Have we looked at increasing any sort of questions around exposure to substance abuse in the home or in the community, violence in the home, the other things that impact their ability to function on a day-to-day level in the school?
So for those questions, we rely on the Healthy Youth Survey, which is administered every other year, every 2 years to students in grades 5, 8, 10, and 12.
6, 8, 10, and 12.
So that's where we get that information.
Okay, I mean, I know that we talked about the OSPI's survey that was come out at the beginning of this year, and we talked about potentially incorporating some of that. Have we worked any further on that in relation to this work?
Yeah, we considered the benefits of the Panorama survey and how broad it was across many different risk factors. we decided that that would serve as a flag for more inquiry on students that might be affected by the things that you're talking about Director Nicholson. So very much looking to cross-reference the Healthy Youth Survey data that we've had before, and taking a look at leveraging our new social workers, for example, and paying attention to those data coming from counseling offices, and then turning around and implementing tier 3 interventions at that level.
And I just would add that we expanded the Panorama survey to include additional indicators and use that as our stakeholder annual survey this year, so that we'll have additional information as well.
I just have excuse me. A lot of this stuff sounded like things we already do, we just do it one place. Is there anything new or some of these things also look like this sort of refreshed in any way? Or is it mostly all just
I think most of these things we do as part of our school improvement planning process. And in that respect, I think we're ahead of the game. I think it's more intensified going into next year. We're lacking some data points that we would normally have in the spring, and so we're trying to be more intentional, and this certainly helps us to be more intentional that way.
And with the goal, the goal is because there's information out there about learning loss during this pandemic, and so it is to assess how much is it within our kids, and what do we need to do to bring them back up. What is the social emotional that was impacted because of this? So it's bringing that whole kid that was impacted by the pandemic to where they should have been if there hadn't been a pandemic. I mean, is that?
Yeah, I think the focus is less on sort of that overall collective accountability marker and more on individual students. How are they doing? What do they need?
That's nice, the kid.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm very glad that we're kind of tooting our own horn in a sense, because we do these things and we are focused on every and each child. And I think it's great that we do that. One of the big concerns that I have is that we continue to do this and focus on each and every child, and that we don't stray and give a different perception of the focus. One of the things that I did like about when you first started, you mentioned that if you're talking about the number of kids in AP classes, if our society or our community here is 5% African American, we would expect, therefore, 5% in AP classes. If our community is 40% free and reduced lunch, we have to go further and say, we also then therefore expect 40% of free and reduced kids in AP classes in all of those types of environments as well. So our equity lens is for each and every child, and we continue on. When we start talking about a recovery plan in which we talk about, and it mentions here, glasses are sticking up, what are we going to be doing, current data and current state based on equity analysis and student diagnostic assessment. The following student groups need additional time, support, and extracurricular. Yes, we are focusing on each and every child, and that's great, fantastic. But I look at it as more perception as to what is the continued perception as to what you're telling the community about your community of students and what their needs are. And it first starts out talking about, well, we have, groups in the American Indian, Alaska Native, African American, Hispanic, Latino, Native, Hawaiian, and other Pacific, English language learners. And it goes down with students with disabilities, students experiencing homelessness, but yet it starts off with the underrepresented communities first, as well as they're the ones who need the most service. When you mentioned you only have 5% African Americans, yet they're the second category on the students that need the most support.
I see what you're saying. So my example was to explain disproportionality.
I
So I was
understand.
not in any way trying to
I understand.
select one group.
But what I'm concerned with is that the perception is that we're continually talking about the needs associated with minority kids or underrepresented kids, more so than focusing on the greater needs of each and every child needs as a result of the pandemic and as a result of not being in school, being online, and that certain kids can, need additional growth and additional education in school. And I think at some point in time, instead of reporting that we always have a problem with these underrepresented kids meeting that opportunity gap, when they're just a very small percentage of the organization, we need to focus in on how can we represent the entire picture.
I'd like to ask Dr. Scott maybe to address your concerns.
Yeah, I think you've touched on it, Dr. Matthews, in a couple of ways. I think a few things might help Director Lassane in terms of our what we want the community to know is that we do have universal supports for each and every student. In fact, the multi-tiered systems of supports, that MTSS model, is super important in serving as a framework for all of our community, particularly those of us who are working across those different tier levels, to say, okay, so what are the research-based, evidence-based best practice approaches to ensure that every student, all of the students that are in the categories that you're describing, but each and every student are receiving high quality, standard aligned, tier 1 instruction, social emotional supports, and positive behavior intervention, all students. And then what we look at is what are the groups that are experiencing disproportionate outcomes, right? And so for the sake of this particular plan, the plan required us, and federal funding actually requires us to specifically address and earmark resources, strategies for student groups by ethnicity or program that comprise the gaps that we're talking about, that comprise the gaps we're trying to so aggressively close and put time and resources into those strategies. So that's not at the exclusion of any one particular group. And the student groups that you're referring to aren't in any sort of order there, right? We could easily have moved the program groups there, students experiencing poverty, students experiencing homelessness. First, there's no ordinate significance to that particular area there.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
And I understand also that when you start talking about 40% of our total population are free and reduced lunch, we have a large percentage of kids that are homeless. They also represent groups that are not in those underrepresented groups. They represent, Caucasian and Asians.
Absolutely.
So therefore, if that's the case, why not also include Caucasian and Asian groups in the verbiage in which you put out to the community as those that need additional support in those areas?
It's a good question, because you're right. There are every group represented in those programs.
This past year,
right.
have suffered some type of need, additional support requirement.
I think the short answer to that is that the plan template and the plan specifications may not have called for that kind of specificity, and for uniformity's sake in answering the questions that we wanted, that we needed to answer within those items there, and then built out a little bit in that narrative to explain the efforts that we in the target groups.
But we do realize that every representative group within our community during this past year has suffered some type of crisis or challenge as a result of the pandemic and will need some type of support and recovery to get back into well-being.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, I want to, not to belabor the MTSS point, but the MTSS framework is designed to reach each of our 20,000 students, where they are, what the data show that they need, right? Not just academic data, social emotional data, and other risk factors that might be unique, that aren't unique to any one group,
Yes.
but unique to that particular child that we
Yes.
need to address.
Yes.
That is what this plan purports to do.
Yes.
That's what we're committed to doing.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Superintendent Acknowledgement.
Yeah, I just had a couple, I guess, pretty specific things I wanted to mention. One of them was in I think it was the academic analysis or diagnostic assessments for academics, was specifically the introduction of the new screening for dyslexia for students K-12 or K-2. Again, my older brother, you guys remember me mentioning the one that did snow out, he also has dyslexia, and this was over 10 years ago. But I know my family had a really hard time finding, number one, that diagnosis, and number two, the supports that we needed for it. And so that was over a decade ago, so I was just wondering if you have the information or anything else on how support for dyslexic students and other disabilities has changed since then, because I know my family had a lot of struggles with that. In getting support from my mother.
So the dyslexia screener is not designed to diagnose students who have dyslexia. What it's designed to do is identify students that have the potential of being dyslexic. If you're diagnosed dyslexic, there's a process that you go through with a doctor, psychologist. At any rate, the screener then leads to supports that are intentionally designed to help you to develop the skills that you need in K2 so that you can be reading by grade 3. But in addition, the early learning department is doing a lot of work around the science of reading so that regardless of whether or not you qualify or even have a propensity for it, you get those kind of skills. So quite a lot of research has been done over the last 10 years in this area. And this is a brand new law. This will be the first time that we've done the screening.
Yeah. Another thing I was wondering is I actually, I know someone who is actually writing a proposal and thinking about this a lot is doing that screening for students that are not just K-2 until we reach all students having been through the screening, if that makes sense. So like our students that are currently enrolled in the 12th grade may have not been diagnosed or screened for another disability or not been diagnosed at all. Since, like you said, there's a lot of new research around it, I was just wondering if that was something that the district has looked into, screening for all grades until we reach a point where all students have been screened and we only need to do grade accepting, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is a brand new law that's come down from OSPI, and we're just in the process of implementing it. So we haven't really given much thought to how you might screen older students. Screening K2 students is really around things like naming letters and objects and colors rapidly, and then comparing that data with your comprehension data. So the test that we would give wouldn't really be appropriate for an older student. So what I can look into what that.
Dr. Matthews, if I may. I would say that while Dr. Matthews is accurate that we do not do screening in the older grades, one of the things that we're doing in the academics office is helping to support literacy, not just K2, but some really intentional phonics and word study in grades 3 through 5. So one of the things that we've noticed, for example, in our iReady data is that students struggle in the area of phonics in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, where we don't typically teach a lot of those skills. And so we're actually building in some instructional frameworks to intentionally instruct students in word study, which is similar to some of those phonics lessons that you would have seen in a K2, to address some of those needs. So while we're not doing diagnostic testing in that particular area, like we are with the dyslexia screener, we're still serving students who have instructional needs in those areas.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's really good to get more info on that and how it's changed since.
Yeah.
The other question I just had, and this is sort of a broad one, and I don't know, I don't expect like an immediate ability to address it, but one of the things I always notice is in terms of socioeconomic status when we discuss it, especially in schools, is settings, I guess. The only factor that is considered is being on free and reduced lunch or not. And I know a lot of that has to do with privacy between the family and income reporting between the district. So there's a lot of like logistical issues there. I just also know from like a standpoint of paying for AP testing, for example, or paying for students that take the SAT more than one time, like those original ones. There's a lot of things that are a family might not necessarily qualify for free and reduced lunch, but those things are also still a large burden. And at our online high school as well, it's like, that's why it's such a big deal that it's free this year, because that is such a large financial burden a lot of time. So I was just wondering if we have ever looked into, or other districts have ever looked into other ways to gauge socioeconomic status and be able to address equity gaps in terms of students not being able to afford things who might not necessarily qualify for free and reduced lunch, since that seems to be the only benchmark that we have.
Dr. Matthews, I don't know if you can speak to some of the, I know that for students who do qualify for free and reduced lunch, it typically tends to be the indicator. But often I know that if students, for example, the older students get, the less likely that they are to fill out forms or request free and reduced lunch applications. So I do think that there are some opportunities for students to be able to waive fees and things like that. I don't know, Dr. Matthews, I know that there are some like SATs and things like that we can waive costs for students who qualify, but I don't know of any other data.
Now, some of the schools have organizations that can support it, like Blue Gold Club at Everett High, for example. Unfortunately, it's sort of a logistical challenge, right? Because collecting income data is very private. And so even when we collect it through free and reduced lunch, there's a limited number of people who are allowed to even know that what data out there exists. So I would just really encourage people to work with their principals to see if there are other sources of income through some of the philanthropic organizations. We have removed some of those barriers by paying for the PSAT and the SAT. I know that we've had some foundation grants over the years and grants with Everett Community College, but I also understand it's still a burden.
Also, I was going to jump in, that there are, even at the state level, some initiatives to remove some of those barriers. So for example, right now, lunches are free to everyone. And, given that we don't know who's experiencing the hardships and rather than go through that process, and that's federal money. And then there's been initiatives at the state to reduce the fees of credits, college and high school. And so there's a couple others that have happened, and that's just sort of because, it's part of their education. Because it shouldn't matter whether you're on free or reduced lunch for some of those. And, hopefully we'll continue to see more of that, both at the district level and at the state level.
I remember too, when I was on parent groups at Jackson, we always had something like there was a fee for graduation parties and stuff like that. So maybe Dave Peters could answer this more, but it was, we always put on our PTA everything, talk to the counselor, so that if a family didn't want to plan free and reduced lunch, but wanted to do another PTA, it was talk to the counselor, because the counselor could look at that, and the counselors would just let us know. So I don't know if that's the appropriate use of the counselor, but that's a confidential person the student can go to and talk about what kind of services are out there, and the parent groups can sort of direct that also.
Yeah, I get it's sort of a logistical difficulty with privacy laws and everything. I just think that's something we could look into in the future for potential, because everyone having free lunch is a really great thing this year, and just looking into that, especially with academic opportunities and like AP testing specifically.
I'm going to take a moment to bring us back to the resolution. You know, the discussion's been great, and I appreciate the learning that we gained from it when you ask questions. All of us will ask questions. But I would like to, at this point, ask directors or student representatives if they have any additional comments or questions regarding the resolution before us before we vote.
I just had one.
Go ahead, please.
And that was about process improvement within this framework. Is there anything from the law that was passed that requires us to have a review or process improvement process for our equity analysis tools and things like that to make sure that our programs are doing what they're supposed to be doing and giving us the ability to change those?
So that's that last piece about monitoring. It's about the second to the last slide. So yes, we need to monitor whether or not the supports are effective. And as someone pointed out earlier, you know, that's really already part of our culture to be looking at that data cyclically through the year to make sure that our programs and interventions are working and make adjustments as we go. So absolutely.
Is there a formal process associated with that, or is that just something as a group that is administering this program is just a constant?
Yeah, it falls really in our school improvement planning process, first of all, and then we have a process through what's called the consolidated program review through categorical programs where we have to look at that disproportionality every single year.
Also, as I mentioned, we do have to report back in November and in April on this as well.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I am going to call for a motion to approve Resolution 1254, Academic and Student Wellbeing Plan. Second. It's been moved and second to approve Resolution 1254, Academic and Student Wellbeing Plan. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Our plan is approved. Thank you, all the presenters, and for all the good answers for questions. Our next item of business under 14.0 new business is 14.03, and this is policy 2123, health and physical education program, proposed revisions. Mr. Hutchinson.
Well, good evening. With the passing of Senate Bill 5395 in 2020, all K-12 public schools were required to provide comprehensive sexual health education that is medically accurate and inclusive of all students for the 2022-23 school year. The bill also defines social and emotional learning instruction for grades K through 3 that is consistent with Washington's CEL standards and benchmarks. For grades 4 through 12, the bill will continue to include HIV/AIDS prevention education in compliance with the AIDS Omnibus Act that is still in place. Revisions to the policy presented to you this evening did not alter our district's historical practice to annually provide parents with the option to opt out their student of the comprehensive sexual health education component of our health and physical education program. And as you can see, the majority of the policy revisions presented before you tonight encompass those changes within the law itself, and then also those revisions I just described to the HIV and prevention education in our health program. Proposed revisions to policy 2123, health and physical education program, had previously been reviewed by the Policy Review Council, Legal Counsel, and the Superintendent's Executive Cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing no questions, we'll go ahead and move this to second reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is upcoming agenda items, and I'll have Dr. Saltzman for those two.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public. At the June 8th regular meeting, the board will discuss the following: recruitment, retention, affirmative action, strategic planning update, policy 2123, Health and Physical Education Program revised second reading. Teacher of the Year, retiring student representative, the April financial report, the annual operating plan update, and the Snow Isle Snohomish County interlocal agreement. At the June 17th special meeting, the board will attend Sequoia High School commencement. At the special meeting on June 19, 2021, the board will attend high school commencements. Thank you.
I think when we reviewed the agenda, I asked a question about our regular meeting on June 8th. The strategic planning update and the annual operating plan update, and I believe Mr. Gunn mentioned that those were sort of one and the same thing at this meeting. Is that correct? So we would go ahead and move that strategic plan update, because that's going to be rolled into the, thank you.
Correction noted, Mr. Duffy.
Excuse me, so we should eliminate the AOP update.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that correction.
Okay, item 16.0 is executive or closed session, and tonight we do not have an executive or closed session, which brings us to 17.0. We all know what that means. That's adjournment. I hereby adjourn Everett Public Schools Board of Directors meeting. Thank you all, and have a lovely evening.